Welcome, everybody. I am here with another friend named Mike Kelly, the Executive Director of the Baltimore Metropolitan Council. Welcome.
Thank you very much. It's great to be here.
All right. So, Baltimore Metropolitan Council. Most people don't know what it is. What is the Baltimore Metropolitan Council?
So, the Baltimore Metropolitan Council, or BMC, is the regional council of governments serving Central Maryland. And essentially, it's the place where Baltimore City and the surrounding jurisdictions can come together to cooperate on a range of issues. The biggest thing that we do is transportation. We are the home of our region's Metropolitan Planning Organization, the MPO.
That's a thing that a lot of jurisdictions have, right?
So there are over 300 MPOs all over the country, and every urbanized area in the country has one. And the role of the MPO is to help the local jurisdictions program their share of federal transportation dollars. So the core of what we do is planning.
So it's a federally designated thing.
It's a federally designated entity
I didn't realize that
works with the local governments in the state to make sure that local governments have input into how their federal dollars are spent. And it's everything from bike paths to transit to highways to freight movement, any sort of project that might get transportation dollars.
I didn't know that was the core of what the BMC is, and I am the chair of the board right now, and I should know that, shouldn't I?
Then that's my fault for not educating you earlier.
We didn't do the briefing at the beginning. Okay, so, and I love the BMC because it is regional, and it brings together the board is the leaders of all of the counties in the region. So we're talking about, we go Carroll and Queen Anne's are the smallest ones. We've got Hartford, we've got Baltimore County, we've got Howard County, we've got Anne Arundel and Baltimore City. Am I missing any?
That's right. And then Annapolis actually sits on the MPO board as well.
Okay. Yeah. Gavin's been to some meetings.
He has. He has.
Not all of them, though, Gavin, if you're listening. But, yeah, and he won't be there anymore after this election. But we'll miss him. So you talked about planning in terms of transportation planning. So that would be transit and roads, correct?
That's right. Yeah, all sorts of transportation planning.
Mm-hmm.
And then we also get into areas that it's really interesting. Our counterparts across the country, sort of outside of the transportation work, all pick different areas to focus on. And it's really what the local governments want to work on themselves. And for us, we have a big emergency preparedness group.
Right.
We work in affordable housing, managing a pool of housing vouchers to try and develop affordable housing outside of the urban core.
Mm-hmm. And some planning on affordable housing, correct?
Yep. We try and we publish a plan every 4 years. We just published another one called The Analysis of Impediments to Fair Housing Choice. Everything we do does not sound exciting, but it really is interesting stuff when you dig into it.
The core, basic, most important issues that local governments deal with. But keep going.
We get into procurement. We actually help all of our jurisdictions, the school systems, and the community colleges in the region buy a share of their electricity. And since 2007, that program alone has saved the region, I believe it's over $340 million off of BG&E's standard offer rate right now.
You save us money, and then there's a chunk of it that's renewable, right?
Yep. It allows the jurisdictions to dedicate some of that money to renewables, and hopefully at some point we'll actually be able to finance a big renewable project just for the region. And
you've done some workforce housing work?
We do workforce development planning. We do.
Did I say workforce housing? I meant workforce.
I know where your heart is.
Right?
We do labor market analysis. We we publish a report every 4 years or so that first looks at the barriers that workers face. We poll job seekers around the region to try and figure out what they see as the issues between them and the jobs they want. And then we actually analyze the labor market to try and identify the right kind of jobs, high-paying jobs for people with less than a bachelor's degree, because that's really the sweet spot if you want to grow the economy.
And I should note that when you do that kind of work, you bring together folks from all the agencies, right? So it's below the level of the leaders, the mayors and the county executives. But so our workforce development folks, our housing folks, our transportation folks all participate.
Yeah, the neat thing about us is that we with all due respect to my board members, we only see the board members a few times a year. We really focus a lot of our work with agency heads across the region. And if we're doing our job right, we're really a place for them to come together. We get out of the way and we put the agency heads in a room and figure out what they can cooperate on.
So have we missed any areas? I was sitting next to, actually, we were in Savannah on a trip, and we'll get into that. We'll get into Chesapeake Connect and what that's all about. But I didn't realize the degree of the amount of energy work that you were doing in terms of renewable energy planning I sat next to a staff person who works on that.
Yep. We're publishing a big climate resilience plan right now that was federally funded. We're publishing that for the entire region. And that staffer also works on air quality issues and reservoir water quality issues as well.
All right.
So I think we've touched on all the big ones.
Are we missing any categories?
We've hit housing, we've hit emergency, we've hit purchasing. We do a lot of data work. We actually manage a database of all the building permits in the region. Every week, the counties upload new building permits to us, and we've been managing that database for over 30 years to help us project and track development patterns all over the region.
Right. And then real estate folks look at that too, or you share that, right?
Well, it's publicly available on the website, yeah. And it's used all over the place to help everybody make the right investments in property around the region.
Yeah. And it's interesting to have at the table the mayor and a lot of folks from the city of Baltimore, and it's the jurisdiction surrounding it. And I did a podcast with Brandon Scott, the mayor, and I've talked about Baltimore City a fair amount. I always say the suburbs stole the city's tax base, and now we have to figure out what to do about that. Do you feel like there's any conflict that you have to deal with or different ways of viewing the world between the core city and the jurisdictions around it?
I mean, I wouldn't call it conflict, but every jurisdiction has their perspective, and some of those perspectives tend to run along partisan lines. But our job is not to focus on the differences, but to figure out what we can do to bring people together. And there really is a lot of common ground. It's interesting. A lot of our peers around the country, Maryland is, we try. I know we're going to talk about the travel, but we visit cities all over the country every year. And our region is really unique that we have such large county government. There's, I think, only 19 municipalities in our whole metro area, as opposed to St. Louis, where we went last year, which has over 350.
Yeah.
And so our counties, each of our county executives is really a big city mayor. And in a lot of places, the regional agency adds capacity where smaller jurisdictions don't have the staff to do things. In our case, it's the opposite. Our jurisdictions don't need to come together on that much because they're so large. So
it's good when we do.
The tricky part for us is to try and define the areas where it makes sense.
Yeah, where you're needed. Which you do this with a small staff of how many?
We have about 35 staffers at any given time, and about 25 of them are working on the transportation planning.
Really? Okay. Well, I think it's exciting stuff. I don't think it's nerdy and boring. But the most exciting, maybe the most fun part is these trips. And I think you stopped me on the street the other day because I was wearing a fleece that said Chesapeake Connect as I was walking down with my wife down the streets of Annapolis. You give out great stuff. I have a bag that says Chesapeake Connect. We've gone on a trip every year except, I think, 2020, it's COVID year.
We missed 1 year for the pandemic when we did our own podcast that I'm sure people across the country listened to. It was the only thing to do in 2020.
Yeah. But let me see if I can remember the trips that I've been on. Detroit, St. Louis, Minneapolis, St. Paul, Philadelphia. He's cheating. He's trying to mouth the I don't read lips, man. Nashville. Yeah, that was what you were saying. That was the first one that I did. We just got back from Savannah. Have I missed any?
So before Nashville, before you were elected, we also went to Cleveland, Ohio, and New Orleans, Louisiana.
Oh, yeah. I think New Orleans might have been just as was it before or after the election?
It was about 2 weeks after you were elected and 2 weeks before you were sworn in.
Okay. So right, Steve Shue chose not to go, and I chose not to go, I think. I should have gone, New Orleans.
And I had a whole bunch of new board members who wished they'd had a chance to go to New Orleans.
Yeah. Maybe I couldn't because I hadn't taken office yet. But anyway, I have found these trips to be fascinating. You invite not just board members, but there were 70 this time, was there?
There were almost 80 people on this trip.
Almost 80 on this last trip. Okay, and who are they?
So we invite our board, so all 10 of our board members came, which was great.
Yeah.
And each board member is invited to bring some senior staff along who they think are going to get something out of it. But then after that, we really reach out to partners we've worked with over the years. We have foundations come, folks from the Annie Casey Foundation, the Weinberg Foundation join us. We have CEOs. We had a gentleman who owns a construction company, the managing partner of a major law firm. A hospital CEO came this year. And then with the help of some of the foundations we work with, we're able to offer scholarships to smaller community-based nonprofits so that we can really bring a wide swath of leaders in the region. In higher ed, we always have a number of higher ed representatives and some folks from the governor's staff. It's really...
and then some staffers within the governments as well.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it
So
gets
I had
hard.
my chief of staff and my chief administrative officer, and I think in the past we've had head of economic development. She did not join us this year. We had the Resilience Authority of Annapolis and Anne Arundel. Anybody else? I think that's it from Anne Arundel.
I think those are the Anne Arundel folks.
Yeah.
We had a representative from Arundel Hospital come.
Mm-hmm.
We try and make sure that the business and not-profit representation comes from all of our jurisdictions as well.
Yep. Yeah.
And it's really a chance, I see it as a chance for folks who should know each other to get to know each other while learning a lot about the places that we're visiting.
Yeah. And when we do these trips, what I find fascinating is that you do a lot of research, or you and your team do a lot of research trying to figure out what makes that jurisdiction tick and what the challenges are and which of those are similar to ours or different with different solutions. And you go on a pre-trip, right, and you interview people. What is the sort of formula and what are you trying to achieve?
So the trip, the planning really starts in January. We take the trip in October and we slow down for a couple months. And then in January, we work with the board to identify the place we want to visit. In February, we start cold calling people in that host city. I always get somebody to introduce me to the mayor's chief of staff or somebody who can open doors. And we'll have about 30 phone calls with different departments and different agencies and places we might talk to. So by the time we go visit it, usually in April, I will bring one or two of my staff and I'll bring a staff member from my chair's jurisdiction to go down and we'll...
Christine Anderson, our CAO.
Your CAO joined us this year.
I first thought I was going to get to go, and then nobody invited me.
That is a question for your staff.
That's okay. One trip was good.
But we go down there, and over the course of a 3-day scouting trip, we'll meet with twice as many groups as we can actually fit into the trip. And as you know, the trips themselves, we start at breakfast and we finish at dinner with speakers. It's really go, go, go all day, and we try and cram in as much as we can about our host city. And the nice thing is these places are always thrilled to have us. I've never had a problem getting top-notch speakers and getting top-notch subject matter. Because
seem to love
everybody
it.
wants to be a good host.
Yeah, and a little bit of bragging about what they do, and and then they get to think about the big picture. What I've found fascinating is that you make sure that we hear from the elected leaders, and that's sometimes from the city and a county maybe, or multiple cities, Minneapolis, St. Paul. I think we talked to both the mayors. And you make sure that we hear from business leaders, the chamber, whatever organizations exist, and some of the nonprofits and even the community-based nonprofits. I think we've been to a church or some faith organization in almost all of them. I mean, it's just you go after whatever makes that city tick or the challenges and we hear really different perspectives. I mean, I remember the first one I went on was Nashville, and Nashville was growing. I looked out my hotel window and I counted all the cranes in the sky, and there was like 10 or 12 cranes that you could see from one window, everything being built. And then you look down on the street and the traffic is not moving at all, and people are honking horns. And so you hear about the economic miracle from the business organizations, and then the mayor got up near the end and he said, it's been a disaster. He said, we didn't plan for it. And then you hear from, I remember going to a community-based housing development organization that said, look, folks who've been living here for a long time can't afford to live here anymore and have been pushed out into the suburbs, and they have to drive into work for these jobs that they barely make enough money to be able to pay for, and the housing's too expensive. It seems like it's the same story everywhere, unfortunately, and some of the same problems that we have.
Yeah, I mean the issues of urban challenges are similar, unfortunately, across the country. We do hear some different solutions. You hear different approaches. And honestly, in the case of Nashville, some of our hosts there were very candid about their failure to put up guardrails, their failure to plan for the popularity they had. And I think people ended up facing political consequences for it.
Yeah.
There was a big change election right after we were there, and our program was really a forecast of that. It was and it's really interesting because it's wonderful to hear the things that are going great. I think it's better to hear the things that aren't going great. And on every trip, there's one person who's willing to admit some mistakes. And those are always the best sessions that we can actually learn something from.
Yeah. Sometimes they're actually pointing fingers at others, not when they're in the room ever, but I remember going to a community development organization in Philadelphia in a neighborhood where it was bombed out, poverty, abandoned houses everywhere. The people that were on the streets were mostly, tripping on something, but extraordinary leaders that were fighting the good fight, and some of them pretty aggressively. But seeing how that all works is really – and then doing it alongside the Senate president and the mayor and the county executives and the people who are really have to think about these things and solve them every day. So the conversations that go on in between on the bus and sometimes at a bar or sometimes at meals have been, to me, at least as valuable as hearing from the locals.
Oh yeah, I mean the trip really is. It is certainly half of it is learning from our host city, but the other half are the relationships that are formed. And every year, about 6 months after the trip, I'll start hearing a trickle of stories about people who met on the trip and projects they've started together, and friendships that have formed. It's really been great, especially for a lot of the community-based partners who don't always have access to the CEOs and don't always have the direct access to elected officials, to really tell their stories about what they're trying to do in our own region. And a lot of them have really benefited from just the time spent with people who are trying to do good and a chance to directly tell their stories. So
this kind of seems like a dream job for a policy nerd. Tell us about how you ended up in the job and what you did before.
So I never took a planning class. So I graduated from Loyola College in 2000, and out of school, I had done a lot of work at Loyola with community groups in the city, and I was actually working at a homeless shelter. I was a case manager at a shelter called the Frederick Ozenham House in Fells Point, and which was wonderful and did not pay a lot of money.
Right.
And at that time, I got a little bit of a bug for politics, and I started running some political campaigns in Baltimore City, largely to have a side job. And really, really liked that. I ended up going to law school after a few years.
So you were a political staffer, not running yourself, but as a
I was a campaign manager. I never really worked for someone once they got office. I learned quickly the problem with campaign work is that it has a definite end date. And I like things that are a little more steady. So I went to law school. I practiced law for a couple of years and was really looking for a way.
Yeah, you probably did the getting married and having kids thing.
That happened in there.
That does tend to make you look for some security.
And I was looking for a way to blend, my interest in government and my interest in law, and a job at the Metropolitan Council as sort of the external affairs person opened up. And I thought,
how long ago was that?
That was in 2008, and I was planning on staying for a year until I was sure I'd find something better. And
something better.
Here we are now. So it's been a great opportunity.
And how long have you been the director?
Since 2015.
Wow.
And this trip was sort of my first big idea. Once I took over that role, I'd run some big projects for the agency. And once I was executive director, I looked around, and we had hosted some groups like this from around the country. And I realized that Baltimore was the only big region in the country that didn't have a central sort of mission trip every year. And I asked our board chair at the time, who was Alan Kittleman in Howard County, and County Executive Kittleman gave us a chance to do this, and it's been a great program for us ever since.
I've noticed that when you plan something, you really have it fully baked when you bring it to the board, which is great. You came up with another new program this year that was to convene staffers in the local governments and do some, I don't know if it was team building or educational stuff. What was that called?
So it's a program called the Chesapeake Leadership Academy that was maybe a quarter baked when I brought it to you. So thank you for giving me more credit than I deserve. But it was another place where I saw a gap in the region and a place that we could add value. And so what this program is, we invited all of our jurisdictions to give us a list of promising young staffers. And the only suggestion was folks who you could see as a department head and as sort of the next stage of their career. And we were targeting sort of early to mid-career people who were interested in local government. And all we did, we pulled together a cohort of about 23 people, and I reached out to all my contacts in the jurisdictions, folks I've worked with for years in and out of government, and we set up a series of trainings to give these young county staff from a range of departments exposure to police chiefs, to planning directors, to economic development directors. We had Howard Libet, who was the communications chief for Mayor Rawlings Blake during the uprising. Howard came and talked about what it was like running a communications shop during that time. We had County Executive Pittman spoke to the group at the end as our elected official. We had one class where we had 3 female chief administrative officers from the jurisdictions talk about their careers. And it's
including
their
ours, right?
Including yours. We asked folks to talk about their career path, what it is they do, and to try and offer some gentle advice for younger employees to succeed. And it was a great success.
So has anybody poached anybody else's staff off of this from within the region?
Not yet, but I'm giving you guys the report next week, and then I expect the poaching to begin then. Okay, so we'll see who the good ones are. But it was great. You know, it was something that we did fairly informally this year. The class that we had were absolutely guinea pigs, and they were troopers through some bumps in the road, but we learned a lot, and I think it's going to be something that we do every year moving forward.
Yeah, no, I found them really engaged, really intelligent, really excited about what they were doing, and all had positive things to say. And it really is important because we want people to think of this public service as a career, and we want to think of local government. And sometimes you do go from one organization to another because of an opportunity. And we have poached some great people from Howard County, from Baltimore City, from Prince George's County, from all over. So Baltimore County, I'm not going to go into any details here because my peers won't talk to me anymore. But it's really good to bring in new blood, new perspective from another county. So thank you for engaging everybody in that. What else? Is there anything that we've missed that you think is part of what the BMC offers, why it's important?
The things that I think are important about us are it is the convening power. We don't do it a lot for sort of mission-based political reasons, but we can, on issues like public transportation, pull together the mayor and the county executives on issues that truly are regional in a way that other groups can't. And I think our board gives us the flexibility to be nimble. Our board has always been interested in innovation and interested in new ideas that our staff has, and has given us plenty of space to succeed or not quite succeed, but always recognizing that we're trying to do things to move the region forward. And I really am proud of the way our organization has largely been able to do this in a nonpartisan way. Groups like ours get in trouble when we start engaging in small p politics. And our board has always really understood our role, partly as calling balls and shots and partly as advocating for the region, not just individual jurisdictions. And it's been a great experience working with everybody to try and make things a little better for everyone.
Yeah. Well, thank you for what you do and for doing it. And I'll tell you, as a county leader, it's been really educational for me to get to know the others that are on the board and the folks on the trip. And if we don't, we talk about regionalism all the time, and we talk about that even outside of BMC. We do get to a point sometimes where we just can't agree on something. Everybody's got to look out for their own turf. But there's no question that throughout the country there's been this, the older cities get old, their infrastructure is old, it gets really hard to keep up with it, and then people move out to the suburbs and the land of pleasant living and where the problems don't exist that were in the city. And it really does leave the urban core in a difficult financial position. And I wish we could help solve some of those things. I know that the governor, who's a big Baltimore person, is trying to do this and working closely with the mayor, and that's good to see. They've obviously made huge dents in crime and violence. And, maybe that's another area that we all should be focusing on is, you haven't done any of that on public safety, have you? Or
we haven't played a huge role in public safety. Years ago, there was a few programs. But if the board asks, we're certainly happy to do our best.
Yeah. What if we wanted to go to another country instead of for one of these trips? Would you do that?
I will go wherever the budget will take me.
Wherever the budget, right, yeah. I know you mentioned that you tend to go to the places that have direct flights on Southwest.
We are running this as a government agency, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you, and hopefully many more years of this. Do I get to go on the trip next year? When is the next trip going to be?
So you'll be on the next year.
I will.
And everyone who goes on the trip is invited by one of the county executives. So just be nice to your successor, and you might be invited to come for years to come.
I won't yet know who that is, though.
Well, next year you're good. You're still going to be... Unless something drastically changes, you'll be in office next time we take a trip.
I'll be in office, and it'll be right before the general election.
And then after that, just be nice to whoever follows you, and we'll see what happens.
All right. Well, thank you so much. And if anybody wants to learn about BMC, what's the website?
www.baltometro.org.
Balto Metro. Okay. All right. Well, there's a lot of great stuff on there, and please check them out. And it's been an honor to have you here. Thank you.
Great. Thanks, County Executive.
All right.
You are listening to the Pittman and Friends podcast. If you like what you hear, please hit the subscribe button, share with a friend, and join us for the next episode.